This is part 2 of Zero Wait State's PLM interview with Alert Innovation.
So was there anything unique about Propel that enabled you to do most of the configuration and data migration on this project? I think, Cynthia, since you did most of the configuration, you have a thought on that?
So I think while Propel is very flexible, it's almost ready to roll out of the box, right? You could almost turn Propel on and not do much configuration. So that plays in its favor. In addition to that, having 20 years experience with various PLM systems, either from a migration perspective or just upgrading over and over, you just get into this template format, right? And it's just really apply what you know. And so we had the 3 in the box system here, and we didn't really even have to deal with personalities. We know each other so well that it was just easy to work together and just to get stuff done quickly. And then with ZWS as a mentor, it just went really fast.
Yeah, because I know what Cynthia's going to get annoyed with, so I'm trying to mitigate it while I'm moving data. So.
You've already been yelled at before on that.
And nobody wants Heather mad.
I'm sure. So that does roll into the next question is what role did we play for you on this implementation? I mean, given the fact that you guys kind of took on the data migration, the extraction, most of the configuration, where were we in this, and how are we of use in helping you get through this so quickly?
Yeah, so you guys were, obviously you helped us kick off the project, right, and kind of level set. Definitely like a quick start tutorial for me. Scott was great in helping me understand how everything was structured, where all the buttons and the whistles were. So he was my mentor throughout the project, and how I was able to, just quickly ask questions about how Propel works and where things are. And as opposed to, just saying, well, I'll configure that for you, we would just have a Zoom meeting or a Ring Central meeting and just do it together. So it was really great mentorship, as well as augmenting our staff. So when things got really busy around UAT, Scott and I were able to split some stuff up and just, keep going quickly.
This is sort of off script from what we talked about, but it just kind of struck me as you were talking. I mean, did it help the fact that you guys all kind of had a common basis in PLM with Agile, so you could kind of use that as a context to explain Propel?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
we could say, do you remember how I used to do, X, Y, or Z in Agile? Where is that in Propel? How do we have the same process or functionality or whatever?
Yeah, I think that probably helps a lot.
Yeah. And Scott was a mentor for me because he helped me accelerate, because there's one of the things about learning to load data into a new tool is all the landmines that you run into. Like the documentation says this, but don't do that.
Right.
Because that documentation's not. So Scott had a lot of real world practical experience about the pros and cons of loading data. So into Propel, or specifically and Salesforce, which I didn't have a lot of. So he helped accelerate and avoid some of the pitfalls involved, things that I've learned when I've loaded data in Oracle or, SAP or other ERP systems that I've extracted and loaded into. There's always stuff you run into and you're going, So we have, he helps get over some of those stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely, don't load more than 200 records at a time, kind of, those little weird things that you don't know why, but as soon as you hit that 201, it goes to a crawl. Those, and I'm being hypothetical, but there's always in every system that there's some little idiot.
Well, yeah, which fields matter and which ones don't, because here's your template of 3,000 fields, but you only need 6 of them to actually load what you need to load. So
yeah, exactly. That's a great point. So obviously, I don't know that anybody anymore is really debating whether or not cloud is better than on-premise. I think, the ship has kind of left the harbor, and cloud is becoming kind of the preeminent platform going forward. But what were the specific advantages that you guys identified running in a cloud-based system, coming from in your past job, running an on-premise system? What were those benefits that you were able to gain by moving in this direction?
So from my background, having worked also in infrastructure, knowing all of the stuff you need to put in place, especially when it comes to dealing with availability and high availability, remote access, security. I mean, Alert basically just doesn't have internal staff to deal with that kind of system. Obviously, we do run things like VMware and stuff, but it's very small scale, and we had no desire to take it up to that level. And knowing that we would have a high degree of remote access requirements was, it's kind of a given. I mean, there are some stuff with cloud-based that you have the nuances about, how backups are done, and you have to understand that, because it's not a hey, I just forget all about it, and when it goes wrong, they'll fix it for me. Well, that's not but with regards to security, infrastructure, all of that stuff that takes a lot of the work out of the IT department, especially if you don't have anybody to deal with it, which we don't. So, and we had no desire to grow like that. So,
right. And with upgrades, for example, right, you don't have to have a particular resource dedicated to doing the upgrade. We have testing on our plate still, of course, but upgrades with Propel, they're handled seamlessly through your customer success manager. And another good example is refreshes or clones. You literally push a button. And I can't tell you how nice that is compared to my previous experience with on-prem. It just took forever and a lot of coordinated efforts across resources that were always thinly stretched. So.
And back to your point earlier that the system kind of came to you almost ready to go. With a cloud product, the implementation, you're gaining access to the software very early. You're not having to provision servers and load and do all of these things and configure it to a certain state so that you can do your CRP. I mean, literally, you generate a PO and the next day you've got access to a PLM system. I mean, I think that probably helps a lot. So. Yeah,
we had a system stood up super fast. I would say, I don't know, maybe within 6 weeks after I started. And that was, there was a lot of upfront stuff that had nothing to do with standing the system up. So,
yep.
Yeah, I think it took longer to negotiate the contract than it did to stand up the environment.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did.
I think that's probably true. So, again, we talked about this earlier. Kevin already kind of talked about the benefits of the platform. I mean, how big of a factor was it for you guys when you were evaluating PLM systems? Was the fact that Propel runs on the Salesforce platform, and what benefits have you guys identified from that?
Yeah, so Steve, I'll take the beginning, try to address that a little bit. When I saw the Propel demonstration, the first demonstration, I was giddy because I couldn't tell where Propel ended and Salesforce started from that install base record, right? So being responsible for the PLM system and change control in an organization, and always having to kind of understand, that ECO disposition code and what does it mean to say rework the field, and never quite knowing, or Cynthia and Kevin both know, getting the ERP system to produce an impact analysis report that satisfies everyone, and then people will take the time to analyze. It is almost monumental, I would say. And so from my perspective, and I hope that it's on our roadmap, just the opportunity to have that service record tied in with the PLM record is kind of utopia, you know, from a configuration management perspective.
It's something we've always aspired to and
Yeah.
rarely accomplished with
Yeah.
on-premise systems, because it's kind of like negotiating between the United States and China to get all parties to agree. So yeah,
Yeah.
I understand that.
Well, you've got three very interesting departments there, because you've got service, quality, and engineering. So and then you've got actually four if you include materials and logistics. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts there. So when looking at Salesforce, there seem to be a lot of opportunities because Salesforce has a lot of other applications on it. We did look at potentially using an ERP on Salesforce, but unfortunately the ERPs we did look at just didn't have what we needed.
Yeah, they're still pretty immature.
Yeah, so but there's definitely, like, on the field service and the service side, it's stuff we're looking at now. And so, and Pell had places to put data, to Heather's point, that would help with impact, costs and there's lots of stuff we can load into that to help make Propel the source for a lot of information. Especially when it comes to, because our business is growing, so the impact of what these changes are going to do and impact is going to be pretty big. So
I thought it was nice too that you just simply got as a bonus, if you will, things like chatter, right? And reporting and some of the standard Salesforce functionality that I find very much usable. Our users have adopted chatter so quickly. It's just a great collaboration tool.
Yeah, and it's nice to have it associated with the information that that's in the system, so you've got a context versus just having another silo that just kind of evolves on its own. Because I mean, we see that with Slack and with what we've got several here, and they all have. Yeah.
So the ability to pull it in and associate it with the actual object has been wonderful.
Yeah, I could see that'd be really valuable.
I can see why Propel chose Salesforce, because it must have you're reinventing the wheel a lot if you're doing it again. So
for sure, yeah.
So you're done. You're looking back. Having completed this implementation, are there any lessons that you've learned that would change how you would go about doing this if you had to do it again?
Thanks for watching. Keep going for part 3.